Hey, Phil.
Hi, David.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? What do you got there?
I'm good. I'm just reading a good book. Damn glad to meet you. My 7 Decades in the Hollywood Trenches by our guest today, Tim Matheson.
Love Tim Matheson ever since Animal House.
That's right. And you guys are both sex symbols on Netflix today, and yet you have never met. And I hang out with them occasionally at baseball games, and you're going to love them.
I'm going to tell Tim, stay out of my lane.
The sexy lane?
Uh-huh.
I don't even know the terms for a sexy older guy anymore. Is it daddy? Is it a?
They just call
DILF?
They just call people a Phil.
Okay, and then, because we can't have Phil guest on Phil's show, we're going to have Tim Matheson.
Let's spill the beans, chew the fat, food for thought and jokes on tap. Talking with our mouths full, having fun. A piece of cake and humble pie, serving up a slice of life. Leave the dressing on the side, it's naked lunch. Clothing optional.
I have a Quentin question right off the top, which is, I worked with him on a podcast about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh my God!
So I got to see it multiple.
One of the best movies he's done. I mean, and it's each one is better than the one before.
The thing about it, from your perspective, is you're one of the only people we could be speaking with today for lunch that was in all these major Western TV series.
Oh yeah!
And I think when I watched that movie, I think you were the boy version of that little girl on the set of that movie, and like in that world, as everything was turning. Is that
That's
accurate?
pretty accurate, David. I mean, I think so. I mean, it was so familiar to me, those shows, and that was James Stacey, wasn't that? The
yes.
guy who had the motorcycle, and that's who it was based on. Yeah, I probably auditioned for his show. I didn't get it. I mean, I just did Bonanza, the Virginian. I was a regular. And
you just killed 2 of the greatest Western series of all time.
Absolutely, just stopped them dead. And then we did the third with Kurt Russell with The Quest, and I was so happy to see Kurt in that movie because that was our world. We just knew it cold.
I just saw you and Kurt in that show for the first time ever last night because it's on Prime, Amazon Prime.
Really?
You can watch it. And his blonde hair in that show, it's like he looked like William Catt, Greatest American Hero hair or something. It was wild.
Yeah, he's one of the finest guys. He's great.
I've had limited experience, but I've never met anyone who hasn't said he's the best.
Oh, yes.
Of all.
I mean, because he was an athlete and AAA ball player and wanted to go.
The world's greatest athlete.
Absolutely.
Remember that movie?
Yeah. Name dropper.
The Disney movie?
Yeah, sure. And he was all those things. But he did it for real. And he'd established himself as a person outside of his acting.
Yeah.
And after he threw his arm out, he went to play ball and he was done with acting. And I think, for a lot of the younger stars like Jodie Foster and Kurt, and they were smart to get out, find out who they were, do something else, and then come back.
Right.
But a lot of times, like Jay North, I remember was like a kid who played, Dennis the Menace.
Right.
And after that show, he's the biggest star in Hollywood. The show got canceled. He'd be there with, against me auditioning for parts with 10 other kids, and not getting them.
It's great illusion, isn't it?
Well,
You're
it's
gonna
hard.
Be taking care of the rest of your life.
Yeah, but it's hard not to have the skills to process that as a kid. You don't have the maturity to understand. Oh, my career's not necessarily over.
Yeah,
I can transition.
Right. Look at our friend Key Kwan, who was couldn't be bigger.
Indiana Jones, right?
Indiana Jones, Goonies, and then didn't work for 30 years?
Right. Said he was waiting in a room with 100 guys for the one part for an Asian kid that he wouldn't get.
But got into it from a production standpoint and became a stunt
coordinator.
Yeah. And then here comes Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I think the thing to do is just go on with your life.
Yes.
It's like, I just found that I'd slam into a wall and then I'd say, okay, now what? now what do I do? Pivot? How do I pivot this?
Well, your book, which, the reason I thought to beg you to come and do this was I bought your book signed, even though I've met you, and I could probably have gotten a signed one in person. I bought
it twice. Those would be more valuable.
I'm going to be personalized now, so then I can't resell it. But it's a great book, and it's a great book for me about not just show business, but like there's a lot of wisdom about life, hard earned. Because I should say the book is called "Damn Glad to Meet You."
Wait a minute, did the guy from Mad Magazine draw
Yes,
this?
Rick Merowitz. He did the
subscription. This was huge in my life. That this is fantastic. All your parts.
Yeah, he caricatured every a lot of different parts that I've played.
Yes,
and me as both doctors. I think from Otter was a doctor in Animal House, became a gynecologist, and I
still a gynecologist in Beverly Hills, according to the film.
and I'm a doctor in Virgin River.
Oh, you don't know how much I know that. I've seen my wife one time at the Playtone Suite when we were watching a game. My wife was with me, and she was sort of like, I'm always dragging her along, and she likes baseball, but she doesn't love it 100%. But when she saw you in the box when she saw Doc from Virgin River, which I've watched every episode.
Oh my gosh!
The pandemic. I think we are here today with the two silver foxes of Netflix during the pandemic.
Really?
And today, you two, both sex symbols.
Really?
Yes.
I think Tim wins.
I think everyone agrees. I wasn't going to put a 1 and 2.
Wait, before we go any further.
Yes.
Where's our lunch from today? Gastrobot Eats. Gastrobot Eats. Thank you, Gastrobot Eats.
Thank you.
Not that they gave it to us. We paid for this. but we'd like to acknowledge where we're having people, because they're seeing this too on the YouTube. They want to see the lunch. I understand. There are some people who watch only for the lunch. Some people watch for the naked.
This is damn good.
Damn good.
This is damn good.
Damn good. Damn glad to meet this salad. And then the other thing I wanted to do, because we didn't really do a formal intro, we just started yapping.
Yes.
David, for people who may not be as familiar as we are with Tim's oeuvre, could you just list off some of these incredible credits of our guest?
The thing is, I could list the ones that you already know, and this book started with, it was going to be a book about Animal House, which is something we've talked about.
Could be a book in and of itself.
It was going to be.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, I am so glad it's so much more than that.
Oh, thanks.
Because for me, it's like knowing you from Virgin River, knowing you from West Wing, knowing you from Animal House. What I didn't know was a lot of the work that was before I was viewing TV. And it's especially wild because I actually have gone back to watch you and Gary Getzman, your lifelong friend. I didn't realize that you basically are brothers from, like, you starred in two big projects with him. Like when you must have been like,
I was 16, I believe, when I did Divorce American Style, and Gary was probably 13.
Wow.
12 or 13. And just as hip and smooth and cool as he is now. Always
the ultimate cool guy.
Yeah, always.
He was an actor when he was a kid.
What's that?
Yeah, he was an actor.
Getzman, I had no idea.
You didn't know this?
He acted in every Jonathan Demme movie too.
No kidding.
He just did a cameo, or he'd play a song, or he'd be
not
a
only
band.
that, he is the basis for one of the major American films of the last couple of years.
P.G. Anderson. Yeah.
Yes, that movie is about Gary.
Which one?
Licorice Pizza.
Licorice Pizza
no kidding.
is about Gary's childhood.
Wow.
And it's about some of your shared childhood, because isn't there like a scene of you guys going on, is it Ed Sullivan?
Yeah.
You really went on Ed Sullivan.
We went on the Ed Sullivan Show. Lucy was on CBS, and she got them to do we all the kids got together to sing in a sketch or skit the theme song to the movie. After Lucy had talked to Ed about plug the movie, shamelessly for 3 or 4 minutes. And then we did this thing and this song and dance. And I was in the Marine Corps at the time, so they got me out on liberty. I think she called Bob Hope, and he called in the commandant of the Marine Corps and said, "Can you just Could you send Tim on duty to the Ed Sullivan Show?
So Bob actually ran armed services.
Absolutely, yeah.
He could have whatever he wanted.
By the way,
Pull that kid off a ship.
Who's going to say no? Yeah.
I believe he
Bob
may be
Hope.
running it again
Well,
based on current events.
yes.
Yeah.
I couldn't. I wish. He tell us about doing, first of all, knowing Lucy and going on the Ed Sullivan Show. What was that like?
Well, Lucy was one of the brightest stars in heaven for me. I mean, because I grew up
all of
watching
us.
I Love Lucy.
Of
I
course,
mean,
changed everything.
my God. I mean, that was the first sitcom, really, wasn't it?
The first 3-camera at the time,
Right.
in front of a live audience. Desi Arnaz invented that form. That form did not exist.
You say Desi invented it. I
Yes.
think one thing I got from your book is I think Lucy did. I mean, I'm not saying with the camera work necessarily,
Yeah.
but in terms of running the show, she was.
Oh, yeah. I'm
was-
not talking about who ran the show. I'm talking about inventing the form of the now 4-camera in front of a live
yes.
studio audience. When we see the Honeymooners or things that came before it, those were actually first kinescopes, even though they were performed in front of an audience. But that didn't really exist. They would film it for later.
Oh, that's
Right.
why. That's what a kinescope
Yes.
was, right?
They would film it. Well, kinescope was actually filming off the TV.
Oh my God.
Yes, but before Lucy, there was no like coverage like a movie, but rehearsed and written for a studio audience, like a play. So it's this perfect in between theater and film, I always say, and that was the one. But anyway, when did you get to her?
You know, the thing about Lucy was she was this monstrous star. And Jackie Gleason from The Honeymooners, they were two of my favorites. And I got to
my
work
God.
with both of them.
Wait, I got to hear about that too. Wait, there's too many things, David.
So we'll focus on Lucy. And she was, I tested, I auditioned. There used to be a thing over at Paramount Studios called the Fishbowl. And it was a theater kind of with raked seats
Yeah.
that went down to like a glass window, kind of a mirror at the bottom. And the executive sat behind the glass, so you couldn't see them.
Just like a police lineup.
Right. Or an execution.
Thank you, Phil. Yeah. And a little number here.
Yes.
And you do your scene there. And I was
So that's
auditioning.
worse because you're getting no
Well, you're not getting
human
any feedback, but
interaction.
at least you don't have to see them looking at you. You know?
or frowning at you.
Or
Yeah.
you know, there's Lucy. Oh my God.
Yes, right.
So, you know, it's kind of a toss-up, I
Yes.
think. And that was my first audition, and then that went well. And
How old are you when this is happening?
I think I was 17.
Man.
17, turning 18, because I graduated from high school in 17 when I was 17,
Yeah.
and I did this the summer after that, and I did not have to have a welfare worker on the set. It was the first time that ever happened.
Yes.
But I was in Monterey. I was at Monterey Pop
Yeah.
at the music festival, and got a call to come back and audition.
Wow.
And then drove down, and then I drove back to Monterey Pop, saw Jimi Hendrix, The Who, and Janis Joplin,
God.
and all that. But Lucy she was spectacular. I mean, you know, she's from vaudeville.
Yeah.
And they did 6 shows a day, and they were so precise. She was just like a surgeon, the way she set up a scene for comedy. So if I have to reach for something like that lunchbox and I want to knock this over,
Yeah.
I'll set it here so that when I reach there, it's automatically going to get knocked over.
Right.
So she just orchestrated everything before the take, and then would just do it. You know,
Was she? I always heard she was such a hard ass. Was she nice to you?
she was very nice to me between takes.
Okay.
In between scenes, she'd invite me into her dressing room, and we'd talk. And she'd ask me, "What do you want to? You know, how do you feel about acting? What kind of career do you want to have?"
So
She
a
was-
real person.
She was a real person.
Nice.
But I think, honestly, now that I think about it, Phil, is what she saw in me was some talent, but I wasn't tough. I was kind of shy.
Yeah.
I was kind of, you know, because I remember one scene we had where we were talking in the laundry room or something.
Yeah.
And she goes, Tell him to speak up.
Oh.
And she yelled at the director, not me.
Yeah.
You know, like I wasn't even there, you know. So I was like, oh my God, you know, Lucy's pissed.
You
at
tell
me.
a story about her that I will say, and I am I'll just be honest, like Gleason, obsessed with a lot of the people. I was never the absolute biggest Lucy fan, but I sort of fell in love with her in your book. And there's a story you tell about being on the side of the stage when some old vaudeville friend of hers is there. And I thought, that's amazing. It made me realize the heart, the positive side of the toughness.
Well, it was, yes. Okay, so I did Yours, Mine, and Ours, and went on after that I was under contract to Universal.
Yours, Mine, and Ours is the
film
Henry
with Lucy.
Fonda and
Yes.
Lucy.
Henry Fonda,
so you're
Lucy.
working with him too. Oh my
Van
God.
Johnson.
Come on.
Tom Bosley.
Crazy.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And she invited me to come and do, I think a year after that, Here's Lucy, a show she did.
Yes, I remember that.
Right?
Yeah.
Universal.
Yeah.
And Gail Gordon was in it.
Funny.
Armis
Yep.
Brooks. He was what a
great
What
foil.
a mensch.
Yeah.
And when she yelled at me that week to speak up again, he took me aside and said, "Tim, don't worry about Lucy yelling at you about speaking up. Last week she was telling Richard Burton to speak up when Dick and Liz were here." And I said, "Oh, thank you, thank you." Yeah. But we're standing backstage during the show. There's Lucy Arnaz is out front, I think in a department store set, and Lucy was so generous to her old vaudeville friends, maybe who'd fallen on harder times or needed a job for their insurance, health insurance. So she'd bring them in for a line or two. And this was an old female friend of hers from back in the day. And so Gail's backstage, I'm backstage, Lucy's right next to me. There's acting going on. It's like there's two doors out here in the front. So and just before this woman makes her entrance, Lucy looks around and says, $20 she blows her line.
Oh.
And I was like, oh my God.
Terrible. Yeah.
Oh my God, how mean, really, how awful. And the woman just kind of looked at Lucy and just shook her head a little bit and went back. Hear her cue. She hears her cue, goes out, opens the door, goes out. There's a little chatter. She says her line, gets a laugh.
Uh-huh.
Then more dialogue, and she makes an exit, comes back stage. She walks over to Lucy and sticks her hand out
For that 20.
And I think what it was it's like athletes, professional athletes are merciless to each other. They say the worst things, boy, having a tough time with that curveball today, aren't you? Huh?
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, they acknowledge the truth and then just make a joke out of it. Yes. And I think it's like her saying break a leg to that friend of hers, Not, and because I don't think.
Oh, she wants the actor to have that little extra edge. I'll show you.
Yes.
Right? And that energy. Can be great too.
Oh, I think it's great.
Yeah.
I think that is a time and time again, these portraits you have in the book, they're little beautiful mini portraits of some of these icons, like like Henry Fonda. We've had Jane Fonda on the podcast in this room talking about, and he was such a enigma even to her and a mystery, and then you meet him in a totally different way. So I love the way you get like a different view. Like by the time you meet him, he's sort of, is it crocheting or he's almost knitting in the...
He was doing needlepoint, I think, because he was trying to quit smoking.
Oh.
And I think Rosie Greer and a lot of people at that time, athletes and actors, were doing needlepoint, probably all to quit smoking.
Right.
And so he would sit there and he was so calm and measured. He didn't chit chat a lot,
He didn't chit chat to her a lot, according to when we talked to Jane.
No, they didn't have a real heartfelt conversation until they were on camera in Golden Pond.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's why that scene is so emotional.
I worked with him. I asked him one day just what's your approach to acting, and he goes, well, it's pretty simple. I think it's an old Spencer Tracy line he was quoting. He said, I walk in the set, I walk in the room, I hit my mark, I look him in the eye, and I tell him the truth.
Oh, that alone.
I mean, it was like, oh, you make it sound so easy.
Well, when you boil it down, that is what it is.
It is. Yeah.
Because when you're fake, you're fake.
Yeah.
It's either, some people call it the method because they have to, whatever gets you there. But that's what we're going for at the end of the day.
Yes.
Tell them the truth.
And how smart he was, too, is he didn't try and do Lucy. He didn't try and do shtick. He didn't try and do comedy. He just played it straight.
That's why The Lady Eve is so brilliant. That Preston Sturges movie. Have you seen that?
Not for a while.
You need to see that.
Okay.
That's one of the great comedies ever made by Preston Sturges. And,
Oh, my gosh,
Or by anybody. And him and Barbara Stanwyck are just
I will catch up on that.
That's such a great one.
Oh.
But wait, let's go back. So you do the show with Lucy, and now you're going to be on the Ed Sullivan Show. That show is so iconic for all of us. You're the first person I've met who I think has actually been on that show. Have you ever talked to someone who's been on that show?
Ringo hopefully coming up, but no.
Okay.
Other than that, not really.
Why? What did he do?
It wasn't as big as when Tim and Gary were on.
But it
was pretty big.
I can imagine you, old enough to be in the Marine Corps, you grew up with Ed Sullivan.
Oh, yeah.
And so now you're there.
Yeah.
Were you freaking out that you were backstage at the
Absolutely.
Ed Sullivan Show?
Yeah,
and you're
absolutely.
seeing jugglers and elephants go by and
Topo Gigio.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the Bee Gees were on that week.
Wow.
I think Stiller and Mara were on.
Yeah.
Ben Stiller's parents.
For our younger listeners and viewers, this was the ultimate variety show. It was
sort of
the
the
Saturday
defining-
Night Live of its time.
You're absolutely right. It
with
was
someone
vaudeville.
not funny at the center.
It was vaudeville. It had just had act after act
Right.
after act, and then Ed would come out and.
And did he speak to you?
Oh yeah, he was very gracious, and you know how he would kind of mangle words
Yes.
and forget a name and
Yes.
stuff. Ed was tipsing. He was having a sip here and there during the show.
Right.
And
he was a reporter. He had no business being on television, which was why it was so great.
it was wonderful. And I think he got a little sloshed at times, and I think
Hilarious.
I can't do Ed Sullivan, but it was stepping backstage into one of my childhood dreams. Because that was a show I used to sneak into the hallway and look through a crack in the door to watch the black and white TV when the Ed Sullivan Show was on.
Right.
Sunday night when I was supposed to be in bed.
Right.
So it was, it was thrilling. I think George Hamilton was even on, and he was singing at the time. So
Still one of my favorite singers.
Anything goes on that. While we're on the same time period here, Jackie Gleason.
Well, Gleason, it was so funny. I get out of the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
And I get an audition for How to Commit Marriage, this Bob Hope movie.
Uh-huh.
Not as good a script as Yours, Mine, and Ours, I didn't
Right.
think. And it was about Bob has a daughter, and she runs off with me, and I'm in a band, and I'm a hippie kind of guy, and Jackie Gleason's my dad.
Okay.
And it's a Bob Hope movie with Jane Wyman and Leslie Nielsen, and and Gleason is in it only for 3 weeks.
Okay.
And he made his own. His deal was, he asked his agent. He said, "What's the most any actor has been paid in Hollywood for 3 weeks' work?" And he said, "I want $1 more."
Well,
I mean, that was Jackie.
That's how Phil negotiates with Netflix for this Somebody Feed Phil show.
and they give me $1.
And but he was great. I mean, he had an assistant was always with him. Arnie, give me a cigarette. Arnie, give me some water over here.
What year is this?
This is 1969, I think.
And Phil, if you have not seen this movie, which I have not, it is on YouTube.
It is?
I watched it last night.
Oh,
The
no.
complete thing.
Oh, no.
And not only that, I'm trying to investigate the band, the fake
The
band,
comfortable chair.
The comfortable chair. It was a real band.
It's a real band.
One album.
For a minute.
Yes, they made one album, and they were discovered by, it was Lou Adler along with,
This is a rock band?
this
Yeah,
was a
folk rock kind of.
This is
trippy folk rock
It's a
band.
terrible name for a band.
Really? I mean, isn't it? I mean, it's awful.
It suggests taking a nap.
The band took a long dirt nap. They have not. That was
Yeah,
it's
they didn't
one album
last
out.
long enough to have a change of name,
So in 69, I believe his variety show, Jackie's variety show, was still on, wasn't it?
I think it was.
So he's a giant star at the time.
Absolutely.
He was the Ed Sullivan Show on Saturday nights.
Yes,
Pretty much, but with
him
sketches and-
him doing 5 or 6 different sketches,
Yes.
and I used to just watch Joe the Bartender and Crazy Guggenheim. And,
Absolutely.
Reginald Van Gleason.
Oh, it shaped my life. Yes.
And it was so brilliant. And I mean, Jackie, anybody who could do The Honeymooners, I mean, here's a guy who threatens to hit his wife and yells at her to keep her in her place.
Yep.
And yells at his friends and treats them all badly. And yet he had such heart. And, like at the end of the show, he'd say, "Baby, you're the greatest."
Yeah, he'd say, "I'm an idiot," and you were right.
Yeah.
It's the model for everything that came after. Really. The brilliant, smart wife. And the dumb husband. I'm living it. But this is he was so great at it. And you're right. How did they get away with that? Which obviously you could never get away with saying any of those things. But the audience knew it would never happen.
He didn't mean it.
Of course, he would never, ever, ever. So it was only talk.
Yeah.
But there's no room in the culture anymore for that kind of gray area or subtlety or understanding.
I just think you need the actor who can pull that off.
Well, you know who does it in a much more crude way is South Park.
Oh yes.
We know that they don't mean what they're saying. They're parodying prejudice and all the kinds of things, but they are outrageously shocking. And the things the little kid characters say, they use the worst language and they call everybody everything, and you laugh your head off.
Well, it's interesting because it's a cartoon.
Yes,
so
they get away with it.
You can get away with it, and that's how in my opinion, that's how the Lampoon always got away with things.
Yes,
because we in Animal House were shooting this in 1976, came out, or 77, came out in 78, I think.
Yeah.
And it was about 1962. So it's like, oh, we're not this sexist and racist now. They used to be that way, but we're not that way now.
Right, but meanwhile, you're getting all the laughs on those jokes.
Yes, and
that movie changed my life. Also, I think I'm so lucky, you probably feel the same way, that when we were becoming adults, when we were teenagers, these milestone movies that changed culture hit us at the perfect age for them to hit us.
We had Kevin Bacon on, and he goes,
Yeah.
He asked us, I think, how old we were. And
Yes.
It was like the perfect age to watch Animal House.
Yeah, 17, 18.
And it was what a game changer that was. It was a game changer, obviously, in your life, but it was a game changer for
movies,
every kid.
and the culture.
It was the first comedy, I think, written by young people for young people.
Is that really true? I mean, it certainly felt like a seismic change. Like, oh my God, this is for us. And it's coming out the same time like Saturday Night Live is happening on TV. And this is, Belushi has just scored big on that. And now he's the star of this. And, it is like the inmates are going to run the asylum here when we're watching that movie. So you got to take us through your casting of that and working on that, because that's just,
Well, it's like it was that big of a moment in my life because I was, I'd finished doing The Quest. I was playing regular kind of nice guy parts on TV, episodic play, as a guest actor here and there. And I was working and I just was bored with the kind of character. There wasn't any edge to it. There was no great humor.
Not fun.
For whatever reason, I couldn't get it. I did a Rhoda maybe, but I wasn't. It wasn't my skill set to. I love doing live shows, but I didn't do too many of those. And then I saw this script, and it was like, oh my God, this is the most unique, brilliant, typical Lampoon. So smart, so funny.
Did you laugh out loud reading?
I laughed out loud. I think I sat up all night reading. I read it twice.
Yeah.
Called my agent first thing in the morning. Said, I have got to be in this movie. I've just got. And he's, what part? I said, Otter. I was born to play this part.
Yes.
And the thing was, I had been studying improv because I wanted to shift gears and try, a new approach to acting.
Best thing for any actor to take.
I couldn't agree.
Class.
Absolutely.
Maybe every human being.
Yes.
Right?
You're absolutely right.
Yes,
Whether you're acting or not, get in there because life always throws you a curve. You got to go with it.
That's right.
So, but they wouldn't. I went in and met the casting director, Michael Chinich, and he said when the word came back, no, he's not right. He's not a preppy. He's a cowboy or a surfer. He's not East Coast preppy. And I just,
was it because of your hair or something?
My hair was here, and, and I hadn't really done anything,
Yeah.
like that. And so I begged the studio. I knew Tom Mount, who was one of the junior executives there, and I said, just let me get in a room. If I screw the pooch and I don't get the job, that's fine. I can live with it. But I just got to get in a room once. Yeah. And fortunately, I was auditioning with Peter Riegert, who played Boone.
Yeah.
One of the greatest. I don't understand how there's not a series of buddy pictures, because the two of you, and by the way, Animal House is in we did an all-time top 10.
Yeah.
And Animal House is in my top 10. And Local Hero is in my top 10.
God. Burt Lancaster,
but the two of you were just unbelievable together.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, it was so smart and adroit of the writers. Each character had their own style and sense of comedy.
Right.
I was kind of verbal and funny and, rakish, and Peter Riegert was kind of like Groucho a little bit with, and he was always doing and a love story, and Laurel and Hardy were, Flounder and Pinto.
Right.
And Belushi they described him as sort of the Cookie Monster meets Harpo Marx.
Harpo is perfect.
Isn't it?
It is. That's a perfect. But I think he had maybe more balls than Cookie Monster.
I loved Belushi so much growing up. He was sort of my hero, and I'm sort of afraid to go back and watch performances in case I don't like things as much as I think I do. But I did go back and watch Animal House this weekend for the first time in a little while. And there are scenes he does. Like you don't realize how much of it is silent. It's like he had Harold Lloyd-like skills.
Totally.
Like,
well, just the eyebrows.
I mean, yeah. There's those scenes where he's just like in the dining hall and all that, where he's really not even using the verbal skills he has.
Are you guys
it's just
cracking
the face.
up? Are you blowing takes because you're laughing during that movie?
I think I was in character enough when I was working with him, not to blow a take, but
there is an improvised element there, right?
Well, a little bit. I mean, it's probably like, on your show, you stick to the script.
Yeah.
But there were scenes that, and I would watch. I'd be standing right next to
there's such anarchy happening, right? So
yes. But watching him do, because he didn't have much dialogue. It was all physical.
Yeah.
Like stealing the lunch.
Yeah. Amazing.
It was just to watch that, and it was like one take. I mean, we didn't have a lot of time to shoot 3 or 4 takes of anything.
I've become friendly with Landis over the years, and how much of the success of that movie is due to him?
John Landis is greatly responsible for the success, because
he's a great comedy director.
He's a great comedy director. Yeah. He understands physical comedy. Here's how deep John goes.
Yeah.
We shot in Cottage Grove, which was a town near Eugene where we were shooting most of the movie.
Yeah.
One whole week we shot the parade, the finale of the movie. One whole week. And in Cottage Grove, so he wanted us to know Cottage Grove, so he showed us the only other movie ever made in Cottage Grove on a Sunday before we went, which was called The General, starring Buster Keaton, which he directed. And I think it cost $1 million then, which would be like, I don't know, $100 million today.
Wait, that who directed?
Buster Keaton.
I thought you were saying Landis.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean
Yeah.
But so Landis showed us that.
Yes.
So that was made here, I don't know, 70 years ago or 50 years ago, and we're going to shoot our movie here too. So it was like kinship with filmic history,
Yeah.
But that's Landis. He knows. He knew. He just knew, and he was always off stage throwing stuff through a scene, throwing a cup of water over here, or props. Because so you see stuff flying through the scene. That's Landis.
Amazing.
And the prop guy throwing it too.
Yes.
But just so there's constant chaos.
Yes.
And it was and Ivan Reitman, I must say, fought long and hard against the studio to get the money, to get everything so that Landis could make the movie he wanted to make. And Ivan wanted to make that. He had that movie developed so he could direct it. He wanted to be a director, and the studio goes, nah. We've seen your thing with women in cages or whatever the heck it was, Anyway, you're not ready for this.
So Landis had done, I believe, Kentucky Fried Movie.
Yes,
which is series of sketches, pretty much.
He'd done Schlock, and Kentucky Fried Movie was, I think, in production then. I don't think anybody's seen it, and they showed cuts of it to Ned Tannen at Universal, and then he hired Landis.
R-rated comedy.
Yeah.
Right? So he's the perfect sensibility.
Absolutely.
They knew that kids, just being our age, 17, 18, we want to see certain things.
Breasts.
Right?
Yes.
We want to see, and what if you work all that into the comedy? Then you've got the ultimate teen movie, and you're going to make a fortune.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you do it right.
And there's no Judd Apatow. There's like the whole film world changes if you don't have that.
There would be no Judd Apatow without this.
Yeah.
You're in a subsequent movie that's also chaotic and anarchic, but it shows if you don't have the sensibility as a director for this kind of chaotic, you know what I'm going to say, 1941.
Yeah.
It's as brilliant as Spielberg is, that's not his milieu. That's not his world. If John Landis directed 1941, that's a very different movie.
John Landis would have torn that script apart and redone it. Only because one of the things that I looked at it, I think it was Stevens' attempt to do a movie like Stanley Kramer did, It's a Mad, 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 Mad World.
Which is also problematic.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, I loved it.
Well, yeah, we love the idea.
But I don't think it works as well as it could or should have.
Right. We love a movie that has everyone you've ever heard of crammed in there for no reason.
He kicked the bucket. Remember, he kicked the bucket. Yes. And
that is a vaudeville sketch as a movie.
But but Animal House, I think, was one of those landmark movies. I think, and the other one Steven just didn't have that touch. But I admire him because he jumps genres like no other director does. He does sci-fi,
like Kubrick,
AI. Yeah. He does dramatic shows, Schindler's
absolutely.
List, Saving Private Ryan, E.T. I mean, the man is the greatest director I think that ever lived, for my money. And he always pushes the edge of the envelope.
Yes.
And this one, he just, it was not his strength.
Yes, David, I will not sit here and have you badmouth Steven Spielberg.
Phil, I won't have to keep pointing out that you haven't read the book yet, but you're going to. But
you can listen to it as well.
That's good.
1941, because you were doing that, you couldn't do something else that came up.
Yeah, I mean, because Steven could do whatever he wanted, and we'd reshoot a lot of stunts over and over again, to get him exactly like he wanted. I couldn't do Airplane. I was asked if I'd be an Airplane, which would have been a nice one too. Yeah. And I read that script and it was like, oh my God, this is
hysterical.
This is insane.
In Airplane, like Robert Hayes' part, I think.
Yeah.
Oh man,
that's in Airplane.
That's all right. You won.
Yeah.
But what's the funniest thing that happened on that Animal House set?
We got into a fight the Friday night before the Monday we started shooting. We were at the interior of the fraternity house that we were actually using an actual fraternity house to shoot the interiors. Yeah. And they were a real bunch of nice guys, really very nice guys. It was kind of a real hang loose kind of, fraternity. And I'd never been in a fraternity house because when I was in college, my short tenure in college, fraternities were lame. They were like straight and that's not cool. Yeah. And so after the party at this first fraternity house on Friday night, I met some girls and they said, hey, come on, we're going to go from fraternity to fraternity house. Why don't you come with us and you can see what other ones are like? And we said, yeah, great. So a bunch of us, Karen Allen and Peter Riegert and I think James Doughton, who played Marmalade, and a bunch of us, and Tommy Holtz, and we all went. And so we go to the SAE house, it's like Tara. It's this colonial mansion. It looks like it's just enormous. It looks like there's butlers, and there probably were, and filled with all, and the SAEs are usually all the jocks. Yeah. And so like the entire football team is a member of SAE. So we just barge right in and go upstairs to this amazing disco kind of thing. Huge skyline of New York up along one wall, like a billboard. It was, a huge place. And then Doughton comes over to me and says, Tim, we got a problem. There's a guy over here that's just really pissed that we're here, and he told us we have to leave. And I said, what's going on? And I'm like Otter. I said, hey, man, what's the deal? I said, no problem. I'll talk to him. He said, hey, how are you doing? And he said, and he was drunk, and he was the president, and he said, you shouldn't be here. You're not allowed here. Only members are allowed inside the fraternity house. And I said, hey, man, I'm sorry. With no disrespect, no, or meant, we'll leave. You're goddamn right you'll leave. We get out of here. And so they started shoving us out. And I made sure I got all my group with me. I didn't see the entire group, but we went down the stairs and got outside. And then I realized that Jamie Widows and Bruce McGill and Peter Riegert and Karen Allen had not been let in. They'd been stopped. And Widows threw a beer, hit somebody's beer, flew through the air and crashed against the wall right next to me on the porch. And everybody just turned on me. It was like, and like these 4 guys came at me and they go, I'm dead. I'm just real. I'm
It's like a scene from the movie.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was like the scene in the motel room where there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to be a flower short here. So it's one of the few miracles in my life. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, some guy appears. This is kind of Christ-like, isn't it? And he puts his arms up like this, and the guy was huge. He was like, like he was like a lineman, and he was probably the only sober SAE guy there. And he goes, "Come on, guys, relax, let him alone, let him go. No harm meant. It's okay." And I was behind him, and they're punching over him. And finally, he looks at me and says, "You got to get out of here." And I duck down and crawl out and just scamper out. I get knocked to the ground out on the lawn, and McGill had come back. Bruce McGill, who played D-Day, came back to rescue me and see if I was okay. And he's helping me up. And I said, whatever we do, let's not run, because if we run, everything will just break loose and they'll follow us. And then bang, we both get knocked to the ground. And we look at each other and say, let's run. Bam, and off we go. And so we ran, and within 2 blocks we got away from him. But but Bruce had a black eye. Jamie Widows cracked a front tooth.
And you're starting the shoot.
Shoot in 2 days.
Jamie Widows was in our Alice, your friend Allison Janney. I'm sure she was a good friend of Phil's, and when she was on, Jamie Widows called in because I went to a prep school in New England called Loomis Chaffee in Windsor, Connecticut, where Jamie went. I never met him, but the day I got to L.A.,
you're a legacy.
Exactly. But some alumni must have called and said. Told him, he called me to say, welcome to LA, and if you ever want to have lunch. That was 30 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
But 2 years ago during the pandemic at the Emmys, like one of those like stripped down little Emmys, he had his first nomination as a director, and we sat CBS put us together at the same table, and I got to meet him. He was a great guy. I didn't know if do you ever get to catch up, since you both have directed and all that?
We, play golf, and Jamie, and of all the films I've done, I think the one that made the strongest friendships was Animal House, perhaps. And Jamie and Bruce McGill and Peter and I speak frequently, and I talked to Karen, and and of course I interviewed everybody for the book, and I talked to Donald Sutherland before he passed, and to Judy Belushi.
He is so funny in the movie, and
shows his butt.
But he also
Donald Sutherland shows
his butt.
Butt.
That's the tag. That was the button of that scene, wasn't it?
But he defined
was that
every
in the
professor.
Script?
Yeah.
No. The story was that Landis wanted Karen to show her butt. And she said, no, John, it's not in the script. I'm not doing that. And there was a kind of a back and forth. And she says no, and he's, come on, Karen, it's cute. And because she would have a sweater down. And then Sutherland goes, well, it's not right if just she does it. Maybe if I do it, would you do it, Karen? And she went, oh, okay. So Donald took his pants off and he volunteered. And so that was his idea. But
she didn't.
Well, I don't know if she did or didn't show it, or I'm not sure, but.
Well, it didn't need to be, because the idea for Donald Sutherland showing his butt is 100 times funnier.
Yes.
Speak for yourself. I needed Karen Allen.
There was enough nudity in that.
Oh, well, that's what I mean, like silent.
My butt was out there. I was, and it was so funny because it was like my first totally nude scene, full frontal nudity. I mean, they didn't really shoot the front, but I turned my back to the camera. But that day on set, there were 100 people I'd never seen before on the set. And it's just everybody was there to see my ass. Yeah. I mean, that was, and so, I mean, that's why we
quite flattering.
We have, yeah, well, yeah, I guess. We have closed sets nowadays. And intimacy coordinators.
To show your butt.
Yeah, that's right.
That's hilarious.
Do you have any intimacy coordinators on Somebody Feed Phil?
I have them in my house. My wife insists on it.
There's a lot of wisdom in the book, and I like it because it is earned wisdom, like mistakes you have made. And like one of the mistakes that I have a note to myself to talk to my kids about is I just think professionally, one of the great moments is you step into Bonanza. Ugh. It is just about the end. Before you even start, I think it's TV Guide comes to interview you and
David Canary, I think, and Mitch Vogel. And
in the interview, you say something perhaps very insightful and true about the Western is dying. The old traditional Western is dying. And I'm killing it. Yeah, exactly. And Michael Landon is furious. Oh. Is that right? And you say he was right. Because when I think about it, I always think this is an important thing to tell kids today. It's like a message that doesn't get through in the different kind of educational, cultural world where kids are not told this is your job is not to go to TV Guide and tell the truth. Your job is to help sell another season of Bonanza. Because as I read the book, I get the sense Michael Landon was kind of a heroic guy, like carrying the show and all of the crew and trying to keep everyone employed and trying to keep it going. And he didn't need you, in his mind, saying the truth.
That's a great lesson. The lesson is you don't need to say everything you're thinking.
Yeah, it's not confession. Right. It's not. It's and you know, does this need to be said, and do I need to say it now? I don't think so. I mean,
but I think when you're young, you feel like I gotta say it because I feel it.
Well, I was like, it was like inside baseball. You know, it was like, you know, I was like talking to this guy, you know, the reporter, and I just kind of figured, yeah, maybe he's not going to print this. I mean, you know, he knows what this is. He knows what the story is. It's a pump up Bonanza, you know. Yeah. And he printed it. And I mean, I reread it not too long ago, and I was like just so embarrassed and shocked. It was so stupid and of me to say it was true.
Oh, I've been there.
You know.
Oh, yeah. I'll probably say something today.
Our friendship sort of had its first challenge when I interviewed you, and you said something you didn't think you would say because it was so stupid, and I put it in a book called The Showrunners.
I said, "Can you take that out? Because that doesn't seem like something I would say." And he played me a tape of me saying it.
That's brilliant.
The thing is, here's the other lesson for those of you who might want to have a little lesson in this kind of thing. It never pays to say anything negative about anything.
No.
Listen, it could carry into life as well. Unless it's constructive in some way, why piss on anything?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. You're not contributing, right?
No.
You're not, unless it's constructive or we're having a conversation. Listen, you might deduce from this that I'm saying something negative about Steven Spielberg's direction of 1941, right? But it was to make a larger point. I'm not saying that movie stinks. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But there's a difference between, all I'm saying is there's a difference between John Landis directing a comedy and Steven Spielberg directing a giant chaotic comedy. Look at what John Landis did with the friggin' ballet sequence of car crashes in the Blues Brothers. Holy cow. That's like Anarchy on a gigantic scale before CGI. These are cars flying through the air.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think, you know, I learned from that, and I loved Michael Landon. He was so smart. And so funny.
Yeah.
Did his own makeup, came in the morning, he just put a little tiny makeup on his face.
Yeah.
And then he'd walk out. He was everybody's best friend. You know, there was a bar set up by props every night. on the stage.
Yeah.
For anybody who wanted a drink, get a drink. Because
No kidding.
He was just that guy, and
But encourage drinking on the set.
at the end of the day,
Okay. Yeah. I worked on shows where the show is being taped and the producers have the red plastic cups and in them is their favorite drink.
oh my God,
Yes.
oops,
As we go.
oops.
Yeah.
One of the things about the book also that I'm so glad you stretched beyond just like one great success story with Animal House is like the failures are much more interesting. And in fact, I realized I think I might have reminded at a Dodgers game of this. I don't know if you remember. I met you during what I now realize reading the book was one of the low points of your career, which was when you bought National Lampoon.
Oh, God.
And it was beginning to go badly because you went into, I think you came over to Rolling Stone and you spoke to a few of us and, approached a few people about maybe working. I met with you I met with you. I think a guy who later worked at the West Wing with you, David Handelman, met with you, whose ex-wife, Susan Morrison, just wrote the Lauren book, which I can't wait to read.
Yeah.
But I met you, and the thing is, you were absolutely wonderful and charming, but I realized reading that book, you were living a little bit of a nightmare with National Lampoon. Can you tell us just what lesson you learned from that?
Stay in your lane. It was good-hearted. I loved the Lampoon. I grew up with the Lampoon.
Me too.
It was America's humor.
Yeah, I graduated from Med Magazine to Lampoon. That's how it goes if you're a teenage boy.
Yeah, you went R-rated,
yes.
and it was brilliant. And it had fallen on hard times. Maddie Simmons had sort of left it and gone on to try and make movies.
Was Animal House the peak of Lampoon, would you say?
I think I would say yes.
Yeah.
Because
they did Christmas vacation movies
many years later.
Oh, that was a long time later.
Yeah,
I didn't know.
And they did Christmas. They did Vacation,
right?
and Harold Ramis directed that,
right?
And wrote it as well, I'm sure. Those were successful, but Maddie's attention had sort of gotten away from the magazine, and they didn't have people like John Hughes or P.J. O'Rourke or Doug Kenny there anymore. They had just a bunch of, less funny people, and nobody quite knew how to do it. And the magazine was really suffering. So I talked to a lot of stockholders. They said, yeah, we would support a new team coming in and taking this over and turning it around.
Yeah.
So we tried to raise $5 million, and I'm meeting with everybody and mobsters. I'm meeting with anybody who had money, and we finally, and I had a crazy partner, so he kept turning down all the good deals. Mike Milken offered us $5 million. And this guy said, "No, I can do a better deal. Oh. So we kept Milken on hold until finally he just said, "Forget it."
Oh.
And then we had to take a deal with a company that didn't have the purest interests of the magazine at heart. They just wanted to franchise it and sell the name and make some quick cash.
Yeah.
But it just sort of broke my heart, because we wanted to do what Lorne Michaels has done, and that the Lampoon. Lorne Michaels basically took the Lampoon show and put it on TV.
Right.
Because John Belushi, Chevy Chase, Brian Doyle Murray, Billy Murray, Gilda Radner, and there's somebody else too, I think. But that was the core that was in a Lampoon show.
Right.
And Lorne was there like 3 times a week watching this. And then NBC asked Maddie, would you want to do like a TV show? And he goes, nah, we're going to be in movies. That's where the action is. We're going to be in movies. So I said, okay. And Lorne said, I'll take that.
Well, that's what I got from the book was, and it hit me hard yesterday again, because I finished the book during the weekend, and then I went to a celebration of life yesterday for an actor. There's a chance because you've worked with everybody. I don't know, but Michael Cole, who was in the Mod Squad.
Oh, God, yeah.
I was at his celebration of life sort of memorial yesterday because he married an ad saleswoman from Rolling Stone, Shelley Cole, one of the greatest people in the world. And it made me, I spent 3 hours, watching, highlights of his career, but also just thinking about a life in this business. Because the subtitle of the book is My 7 Decades in the Hollywood Trenches. And the thing is, it takes, like, that's why, okay, Lauren, as an example of like keeping that brand of Saturday Night Live
50 years.
For 50 years, that's not an accident. And, you know, and it takes a certain personality. And like, I did a cover story on Saturday Night Live at the era when they were getting the Saturday Night Live is dead stories begin, you know, and Jan called me and goes, Lauren wants to do a cover story. Come, I think my first kid had just been born. So I went and spent, like, I flew in and wrote a cover story at the time. So I saw the soft side and the tough side of Lauren. But reading your book, I like, it is really like, it takes a lot of character to stay in the game and to reinvent yourself and to, you know, come out a good person. It's kind of a remarkable thing. There's a couple of the failures that there's one called Breaking News that am I understanding it correctly that you actually made a series and was it ever shown or was it never shown?
It was dumped. It was a series. It was basically it was West Wing in a newsroom, and long before Aaron did his show, and it was for I think AOL had just merged with Time Warner, and there was TBS and TNT. They didn't know quite what to do with Ted Turner's things, so they were going to turn them into a dramatic kind of venue. And we did a show for, excuse me, TNT, I believe it was. And it was called Breaking News, and it was about a guy like Dan Rather. I played this kind of irascible older guy who'd sort of just gotten laid off from the network, so he was trying to reinvent himself on cable. And it was a good show. Gardner Stern wrote it, and he was
a good idea.
Yeah, it was a wonderful show.
Yeah.
And we finished 13. We were shooting in Vancouver. Everybody loves it. They, you know, great. And then because of the merger, I guess all the accountants got involved, and they said, well, and this has happened again at Warner Brothers recently with
all these films that they sort of
movies that they just don't. We're not going to show this movie. We can just write it off. If we don't show Supergirl or Batgirl or whatever the hell that movie was that they didn't show, or there were even a couple of cartoons that they made, full-length cartoon movies that they made.
It would be devastating to me if somebody did that to my work.
Oh my God! Yeah. It was
it's
horrifying.
More frustrating than having not made it.
Say no to the pilot. Yeah,
made it, and then no one can see it.
So,
they loved it
for stupid business reasons.
Yes, because somebody had a $250 million write-off, and that guy got a bonus, and he killed it.
But literally, has it never been seen?
It was, I think it was on Bravo, which I don't know if that even still
yes, it's
exists.
Never been seen.
I had a show on Bravo.
Thank you.
I hosted a show on Bravo once, so that's how I know no one saw it.
No, I mean, and
unless you're a housewife, nobody's seeing that.
Yeah, and it was just terrible. I mean, I'd never experienced anything like that. So.
Oh, stick around.
Well, no. And then there was another show. I think I'm getting the name, maybe Just in Time or something, where they told you. Where they were told to fire this Annette Bening, who was literally like, can you imagine having Annette Bening, the young Annette Bening, unbelievably great actress, unbelievably beautiful. So they said, get rid of her. Is that?
Yeah.
And
that's insane.
And last night when I was searching for things I could watch on, I think it's Amazon also, I found The Witches. What is the show you did with witches?
Tucker's Witch.
Well, this is a show where, just to show you, like, people who've been on our podcast, like Ted Danson. I'm watching this show, and Ted Danson is the killer in the elevator in the first 2 minutes. But they on Amazon, if you watch this show, you see there was a different cast with Kim Cattrall and an actor I don't really know. Yes. And then they showed that pilot, and someone said, get rid of them. And then they got you and
Kathy Hicks,
who I loved. And it's like, it's just an amazing business that you just, the
Art
ups
Hindle.
and downs.
Art Hindle, who I replaced. It's just, I mean, when they replaced Annette, I think Annette Bening, I think what they were doing was they didn't like the show. So they had to do something. And they were, it was my deal, so they can't fire me, and they can't get rid of Fred, the writer, who was terrible. And so, what do we do? Let's change her. Maybe she's the problem.
Have you ever seen executives be arbitrary in that way?
Are they running the government? Look, we're slashing. Look.
Yeah, look what we did. Yeah.
We should talk West Wing just a little bit more.
Please.
I remember very vividly that same David Handelman introduced me to a friend who was just writing a Broadway play, and I guess they grew up in I forget what town it is, Scarsdale or something together.
I bet, yeah.
And he goes, David, meet Aaron Sorkin. And Aaron Sorkin, I remember, so I met him right around the time I met you, probably the first time, but he was like a guy who, could write well, and then you see what he became. How did that, because that experience is great in the book. It's another great chapter. One of the funniest jokes ever is the joke about, what is the joke? There's an amazing line from Bradley Whitford that he says about like it was the cruelest joke of a main cast member with a reoccurring cast member. What was the joke?
Well, the joke is that the vice president is a heartbeat away from the Oval Office, and that Tim Matheson is a heartbeat away from being a regular on the West Wing.
Hilarious.
I mean, it was, they just wouldn't let my character be a nice guy or be a good guy, and he was a real politician. It was, but Aaron, I mean, working with Aaron Sorkin he's one of the few geniuses that actually makes sense to say the lines exactly as they are written with him.
Very precise.
He had two script supervisors on the set. One was to say, Tim, you took a bite on this. You sat down here, you set a cup over there. And the other one would correct you with any dialogue mishaps.
Down to the syllable.
And she came up to me at one time and said, it's a semicolon,
whoa,
not a period.
Down to the semicolon.
And I went, oh, you mean an upward inflection? Okay. And there was one other time and I didn't know that they would leave the camera tap open for rehearsals, and they were feeding it back to the executive offices, to Aaron and Tommy's offices. And I didn't know that. And in rehearsal, in the first few walkthroughs, I would try things and then I'd ask permission to do it in the take, certainly. But so in this one take, I had just a half a page of dialogue, and I was talking to a bunch of reporters. So I'm talking to these reporters here, and then I went, and I like, oh, I remembered to this guy, and I put the in and transitioned to this guy over here and started talking to him, and I didn't know if it worked or not or anything. So I'm going back to makeup or something, and after we've said, okay, we're going to light it now. It'll be 20 minutes. And I'm walking towards makeup, and the stage door opens, and in comes Aaron. He goes, hey, Tim. And I said, hey, Aaron. And he said, keep that that was really good.
Wow. That is specific. He's unbelievable. I think Raymond was on for a couple of years before The West Wing came on. And so we were on a panel together for some showrunners thing, and it might have been Las Vegas. And Aaron is talking about how hard it is because he has to write every line, and every line changes all the time. They change it, or he changes it after he sees a rehearsal, and all week, and he's up all night rewriting the script. And it's just him, and he's doing. And I said, listen, I just gotta tell you, Aaron, there's this new thing out called Other People. He didn't believe in other people. He had to write that's why that show has such a singular voice, because it's his.
Yes.
I mean, I never had that kind of dedication to do it. I thrived on being in a writer's room, especially for comedy, with
give me a better joke here.
And please, I need help. But Aaron Sorkin doesn't. He's one of a kind. Really.
He's such a unique man. And
maybe David Mamet is the other,
Mamet,
right?
I think, is the equivalent.
Where it gets so, that voice is so specific. Only he can talk that way, let alone write that way.
Do you know what it reminded me of when I read it?
Yeah.
Was a Howard Hawks film. It
Yes.
was like His Girl Friday.
That rapid
it's
fire.
two people talking real fast, they're funny, they're
It's
fast.
music.
And it's just boom, 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 boom. And it's like you've got to really know your text, and
Yes.
you've got to know all the subtext
Yes.
and everything. And it was a great way to get rid of 2 pages of prologue and of
And you're walking.
setups.
You're walking and talking.
You're walking and talking.
Yes.
And the worst part of it, you do it right. It's like 2.5 minutes of just, did I say every word exactly right? And they go, yeah, there was a background could you just walk a little faster?
Oh, then you want to kill somebody.
Oh my God. Who's going to be looking at that?
Well, that's where AI comes in. That's where we need AI. Fix that background.
The first great TV showrunner that I was aware of as a kid, I think you nearly were in a Twilight Zone and were in a Night Gallery or something like that.
Yeah.
Did you ever get to meet Rod Serling by any chance?
When I met him once when I was 12 or 13, but I don't. He was coming on the set to film that opening he did with the cigarette.
I was going to say, was he smoking?
Yeah, yeah.
He did not smoke.
And so I saw that. I mean, I was, and the story that I was in was of an older man who'd married a younger woman, and she was dissatisfied that he was so much older, and she wanted to do more fun things and go out more.
Yeah.
And so she got his brother, the older man's brother, was a scientist who was working on some youth medicine or something, and it made animals younger. So give it to your brother.
Oh.
So she had him, and then she gave him an extra dose or something.
Okay.
And he turned from this old man into 5 different stages until he was a baby lying on the bed.
That's that movie. What's that movie?
Benjamin Button.
That's
Yes.
it.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I was him going in a long dressing gown, going like through the living room, but it didn't make the cut.
Wow.
I still think Rod Serling, when I think of good writing, it goes back to my childhood. Yeah. I think those little intros, as they were sort of very heated, like a newspaper columnist of that era, pulpy, but I think it still sort of defines a certain kind of powerful, serious,
And the weight of it.
the weight of the words.
But that he wrote 2 things that I think are spectacular, and we probably don't remember. He wrote Requiem for a Heavyweight.
Unbelievable.
And Planet of the Apes.
And Planet of the Apes.
That's right.
I'd forgotten that.
Yeah.
But he also wrote a thing that John Frankenheimer directed with Mickey Rooney, which was live, called The Comedian.
Oh, yeah.
And it's one of
Playhouse 90?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And Frankenheimer said the greatest performance I ever witnessed was Mickey Rooney in that. The greatest acting performance I ever saw was Mickey Rooney.
I wonder if we can see that somehow.
It's around. Yeah, it's on DVD. I have it on DVD.
Really?
It's one of those classic, or the greatest TV shows ever.
I think I did one of the last interviews Mickey Rooney ever did, and he was out of his fucking mind.
Really?
It was it was also someone who would tell you, I was the biggest star in the world, which he was, but it's not a thing you should ever tell people. Like you have not told us that once.
I remember him naming the years he was the biggest. 1941, 1943, 1947.
Oh,
Did Jerry
my
Lewis
God.
tell you that when you met him?
Jerry would also tell you. But we were not saying anything negative about people.
No.
Before we let this man go back to his life, we know that he's on
And my lunch.
Virgin River. That's what you're working on now.
Yes.
Which my wife and I find it is literally like in lieu of camping. We go to Virgin River, and it's so beautiful. And we love Netto too. We love the cast you have there. My wife during COVID, I think my son's got her is it Martin, the younger actor, the younger stud besides you on the show?
Martin Henderson.
Martin Henderson. My son's got her a cameo greeting from Martin, who seemed like a lovely guy.
He's a great guy.
Do you actually like the experience of Virgin River?
Oh yeah, I love it. I mean, when I finished Heart of Dixie, I was in a show for 5 years with Rachel, for 4 or 5 years with Rachel Bilson, and it was great. And I'd gone through, my marriage had ended. I moved back into Hollywood. I didn't know what I'm going to do. I was directing and not enjoying that terribly much.
You like acting more?
I think so. I mean, Phil, you'll know more about it than me, but I think these days a guest director on a TV show doesn't really get to direct, you know.
Yes.
So you're
kind of taking orders from the showrunner.
Yeah. How do you want me to have her? You know,
Yes.
I mean, so it's like, and it's hard for me to do that because I've done movies and
Yeah.
I didn't take well to that. So I finally just said, you know what, let me just back off of this. But we, you know, on our show, we all get along very well. And I at that point, I just got a call that said, would you be interested in doing the show? And I read the show and I thought, I really like this show, but it's similar character to I played on Heart of Dixie. In the old days, the networks would say, no, we don't want him to play that part again. We want somebody new to play that part. We don't, no, we want to see it different. And not Netflix. They said, no, they like the grumpy old doctor. Well, we'd like him to play our grumpy old doctor.
Wow.
And so, and we're going into our 7th year now. We start shooting next month, and
Is it as beautiful a place to film as it looks like, or are you staying in a nice? Do you have any view like in any of the views in that show?
oh, only on location. No, I mean we live in Vancouver when we're shooting. And,
Good Chinese food.
oh, and great seafood,
Yep.
Chinese food.
Yep.
It's a wonderful foodie town.
Yep.
And good skiing, and up in Whistler, and Squamish is where Jack's Bar is, which is sort of halfway up to Whistler Mountain, where the ski resort is. But Vancouver, in 10 minutes you can be in the wilderness, you know, outside of Vancouver. It's so beautiful.
Rains a lot.
Rains a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're living the life. It's
And
great.
there-
I'm so happy for
We
you.
did forget
Thank
one,
you.
and we could end on the acting lesson you learned from one other icon we forgot about. Tell me how Clint Eastwood, you confused his approach to acting and were surprised by how smart it turns out Clint Eastwood was.
Well, this was not too long after my stumble with Michael Landon, because when I went on Bonanza,
Yeah.
I was a method actor. I was studying method. I was very serious. I asked everyone to call me by my character name on the set. Didn't go over well.
Did improv cure that?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I mean, it's like, it's just not. It's. I can be in that moment for the time it takes to be there, and then I can be something else.
That's
you know.
right.
So I'm doing the show, and I've been up in San Francisco, and I've studied. I've rode around with cops. I've qualified at the pistol range. I'm a cop. I am a San Francisco cop. I'm in character. Day one, we're shooting. Clint, you know, is there, and we do a run through, and it's fine. We're gonna shoot it like that. And I said, Clint, listen, if you want to run lines or talk about the characters or anything, I'm available. And he goes, no, you know, something nice about hearing those words for the first time on camera.
Huh.
And I said, oh, sure, okay, Mr. Eastwood, fine. I'm walking away going, great actors rehearse. But Laurence Olivier rehearses. This is not a great actor. This guy is just, you know, he's a TV star, got lucky. And great, but listen, it's his movie. I'm here. I'll do my job. That's fine. We get into the scene, and he just is so real and so
Present.
yeah, and it's like he's listening stronger than anyone I've ever. And he changed a word, it affected my line. I had to change a word, and then he kind of bounced off that, and it was like playing ping pong, you know, with a master.
A little bit of improv.
Yeah, and at the end of that day, I just realized why he's a star.
And did you do one take, more than one take?
We probably did one take. I mean,
That's him. I hear even at 90 whatever, it's one take.
Yeah.
He's going to concentrate, but it's going to be for a little while, not a long time, right?
But you're right, absolutely right. He doesn't waste time,
right,
and he doesn't want it perfect. There's no perfect. And he doesn't want to waste, you know, in the old days film, by rehearsing on film. Like some actors about the 5th take they'll be ready.
Yeah.
He said, first take, we print it, unless the sky falls on it.
But people forget their lines. People get nervous. People, right?
But if you raise the bar
Yeah.
to that point, and they know they should come in ready,
yes,
then you
so
do
you're
it.
rehearsing yourself.
He lets you know. I mean,
Yes.
he lets you know like day one. That's the way we're gonna do it.
Great.
So be prepared.
Yes.
And by the way, that's like Lucy in a certain way. It's like the little tricks to raise the game for everybody. That's why, like, I don't hear that as. I love that Lucy said that because I think what she was doing was trying to break the tension and also realize, let's get this right. It's like it's the nicest, it's the funniest way of saying, let's fucking get this right.
This I didn't realize it, but I'm as good as Clint Eastwood when I do the food show. I eat the thing once. That's it. I don't go back and eat it again.
Somebody
it.
feed Clint would be.
That's it.
Exactly.
I'm exactly.
You should get Clint in here. I mean,
we love you. This was phenomenal. It went by in a second.
And you two have never met?
No.
Do you know?
No. And I loved your show. I mean, I just adored your show. I mean,
Thank you.
Romano is what a champ he is, and what a funny show. What a great show.
Thank you. Tim, you're welcome back anytime. We didn't even get into Leave It to Beaver. Was that your first?
We left it. We left it to Beaver.
No, it was my first. I mean, but it was my first sort of like recurring.
Amazing.
You know.
Amazing. Talk about landmark sitcoms.
Was the first with Robert Young, like the Father Knows Best guy?
Yeah.
Tell us he was mean and evil.
No, he was a good guy, and you know what he always said?
I'll bet he was.
Take a nap at lunch.
Oh, that's a nice dad. Father does know best. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you. Thanks, David.
Naked Lunch is a podcast by Phil Rosenthal and David Wild. Theme song and music by Brad Paisley. Produced by Will Sterling and Ryan Tillotson. With video editing by Daniel Ferreira. And motion graphics by Ali Ahmed. Executive produced by Phil Rosenthal, David Wild, and our consulting journalist is Pamela Chellan. Thanks for listening to Naked Lunch, a Lucky Bastards production.